So we are in the book of Zephaniah, just a little 3-chapter book. And it's very close to the end of the Old Testament. There's another book of Zephaniah, Haggai, and then there's Zechariah, Malachi. So it's kind of, they rhyme. But Zephaniah appears on the scene much earlier in time than did Zechariah and Haggai and Ezra and Esther and all of those. This is before the captivity of Judah and Benjamin going off into Babylon, but very close to the end, in the days of Josiah. And then we know following Josiah, he was the last of what we would call the good kings, those that did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. Not perfectly. None of them did it perfectly. Some of them started so well and ended so bad. Some of them started so bad, and like Manasseh, the last thing we hear from him is he repented. And you kind of think, if the Lord will save Manasseh, we're all within reach. Everybody. I mean, even the people in the news and stuff that we tend to hate to see them getting any victory at all. Nobody is too far. And the Lord always says the last will be first and the first will be last, and you try to figure out what does that exactly mean. And frankly, I'm not sure, except, we know what happened with that one parable about the husbandman that hired everybody all day long. And then they hired one person for 1 hour at the end of the day, and everybody got paid the same. That's kind of the way salvation is. Everybody gets the same salvation. You don't get classes of salvation. Now you get other rewards, which we don't know what all those rewards are. I don't think it's going to be ice cream or pizza or things like that. It's going to be some kind of other reward that's really beyond our understanding now. So anyway, we got through the first 6. This is the word of the Lord came to Zephaniah, page 1, and to Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, in the days of Joash, the son of Ammon, king of Judah. So Joash is the good king, but notice we go 4 deep here on the lineage, 4 deep, because there are other Zephaniahs in the Bible. So God doesn't leave us guessing on these things. He always provides all the information we need. Obviously not all the information we want, but he always provides all that we need. And so he says, and then in verse 2, this starts the dialogue. So you right up front you get the idea of what's coming ahead. I will utterly consume all things from off the land, saith the Lord. That's not good news. This is a book of judgment. And he says, I will utterly consume, terminate, everything will perish. This is widespread, utter destruction that's going to come to pass. Verse 3, I will consume man and beast, I will consume the fowls of heaven and the fishes of the sea and the stumbling blocks with the wicked, and I will cut off man from off the land, saith the Lord. Everything. It's almost like going back to the days of Noah. There's going to be that kind of punishment, that kind of judgment. And so I'm just going to briefly go over these to get us current. I will also stretch out my hand upon Judah and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, and the name of the Chemarims with the priests. So we had idolatry going on. They just couldn't keep their hands off the idols, and the men couldn't keep their hand off the pagan women, and the pagan men couldn't keep their hands off the Jewish women. I mean, they intermixed, and God, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And we know from the book of Nehemiah and Ezra that he had to separate them again. You married this pagan woman, you got to send her and the kids away. Boy, that's tough. That's tough. you know. And so he will stretch out my hand upon Judah. And as we know, God often used ungodly nations as tools of his judgment, which is exactly what he's going to do. This stretching out of his hand is the coming of the Babylonian army under Nebuchadnezzar. And they are a cruel and a very forceful and formidable army. And so this is not going to turn out good. In verse 5, this is identification. They had these priests, these false priests also, these priests of Baal. The Qumran priests, these were idolatrous priests who mingled in with the true priests. So they had all this incest going on, spiritual and moral and religious incest going on, And a man, can't tell one from the other, but God can. And so he's separating them out. Verse 5, and them that worship the host of heaven on the housetops, and them that worship and swear by the Lord and swear by Malcolm. That word Malcolm has the idea of, it's a kind of a reference to a king like Melech, Melchizedek and Obed-Melech and things like that. So they were worshiping the host of heaven, which would be the stars in the sky and the moon and that kind of thing. That was very important to them. You say, why would they do that? Because the heavens were extremely important to people in those days. We can't even see them anymore because of all the ambient light. We light up our yards, our streets, our buildings, our porches, everything else, and it blocks out God's creation from us at night. But they did a lot of their life was ruled by the movement of the stars, the constellations at night, the sun coming up in the morning, the moon going down. They weren't ignorant people. They weren't unintelligent people. They understood there was a pattern. There was a God that was controlling this, and there was a pattern, and their lives were built in around that, like the Jews were doing. The moons were very important to the Jewish religion. But you can imagine on a cloudless night, maybe in the coolness, you get out and on the buildings there, they had all the flat top buildings with the parapets around the edge so people didn't fall off. You get out there at night about 10 o'clock or 11 or midnight or something, you look up, I mean, it was incredible. And Marge and I on our one trip to Alaska, one night in the wilderness, we were at a wilderness camp we spent. No lights, no electricity, nothing. And when you got out at night, I mean, it was just magnificent. And the northern lights, that just magnificent. And you just knew. And of course, and the stars, they're constellations. That's where you get your zodiac from, Capricorn, Libra, all that stuff. And they showed up at different times during the year, so they would know. That would be their calendar. They would know it, and the stars would move, appear to move. It's the Earth that was moving, but it appeared to move. And so you can see why maybe they would worship that in ignorance, worship the creation, the stars, and things like that, and they'd see it. They'd say maybe they worship the sun. They'd see it go down, and the question is, what? Is it going to come back up in the morning? I mean, we take it for granted. But, in those days, you didn't have broadcasters and stuff, so they didn't know where did it go? They knew the earth was round, at least some of them did. They knew it was a sphere. So you can see why they may have been easily led into something like worshiping both. And so God says, no, I will share my glory with no one, including my creation. So, and them that are turned back from the Lord there on page 4, verse 6, them that are turned back from the Lord, this describes those that abandon the God of Israel. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13 says, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. So I know what a cistern is, and there are probably a lot of people in the world that have no clue what a cistern is, because we get everything out of it, turn out a faucet, and out it comes. But when we had our farm, we had a barrel outside that caught all the rainwater, and we didn't drink it, but it sure did work well for washing and things, because it was very soft. Everything would suzz up. But the cistern, that's there's another reference where you have putting money into a pocket with holes in it. I mean, it's just going right on through. Same way with a cistern. If it's got a hole in it, it's useless. And so and they're talking about making them with the hole already in them. Did I ask you about the song, There's a Hole in the Bucket? Okay, all right. I didn't know if we... That kind of reflects what was going on with these broken cisterns. And then said, hold thy peace at the presence of the Lord. They turned away from the Lord, and now he said, hold thy peace in the presence of the Lord, for the day of the Lord is at hand. Okay, judgments are coming, for the Lord had prepared a sacrifice, and he had bid his guests. And so hold thy peace at the presence of the Lord. This little section of Ecclesiastes, I've said it once before. I'm not going to read it all again. Those first 3 verses are kind of a model for how we should approach our worship on Sunday. You know, we shouldn't go to church to talk to our friends. We should go with the idea of we're going to worship the Lord. When I was young and went to the Methodist church, when you came through the doors into the auditorium, it was quiet. And you sat down, and some people would be talking at a very low level, just whispering, but you didn't have this noise going on. It was quiet. And it says here, be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. One of the sacrifice of fools is too much talking. Sometimes we don't know when to shut up. And that applies to all of us. And so, for the day of the Lord is at hand. And we're going to see that phrase a lot in the next couple of verses. The day of the Lord occurs 29 times in the Bible, and much of that in this book that we're studying. And so we get to verse 8, and it shall come to pass in the day of the Lord's sacrifice that I will punish the princes and the king's children and all such that are clothed with strange apparel. And so I think it's pretty easy to understand the princes, the people in charge, the people that ruled Judah, that ruled in Jerusalem especially. These are the princes, the king's children. It's going to go, this judgment is going to come upon all the people, including the king's family. The king is not going to be, immune from this. And then we get, and for all such that are clothed with strange apparel. And I don't know if we talked very much about this when we met the last time, but I think the idea here is that it might be the special clothing of the religious leaders, like the high priest always wore something fancy. We see that in religion today. When I was Methodist church, you always come out with a black robe on and turned around collar and maybe this, and then some of them would have, if he was a bishop or so, he'd have a different color. In the Catholic Church, they have all the difference, and the Greek, all that. So it's special clothing. I think that's the strange clothing. It was different from everybody else's regular dress. And so that's where we ended up. All right, verse 9 on page 7. In that same day, and we understand, we all understand, we're not talking about a single 24-hour period. We're talking about an event in some period of time, more than that. He says, I will also punish all those who leap on the thresholds. Okay, so the threshold, you look at that and you say, what? We know about leaping from the stories of Elijah and the prophets of Baal, and they jumped up on the altar and they were leaping around. But the thresholds, so we have to put our thinking caps on. They say, what is a threshold? We all have them. We have them in our houses. When you go to your front door, that section on the bottom there is always special. It's metal, maybe rubber. It's the threshold. It separates the outside from the inside. So I believe the threshold is a picture of separation, a line of separation. Okay, and so it was important. You really can't in a country where you have rain, you can't have a door without a threshold because it keeps the water from coming in under the. So I think here the key idea here is separation. We are to be a separate people, as were the Israelites. We're to be separate. We are not to be part of the world's. The world. We are to be separate from the. We have to be in the world, but not of the world. Separation was a theme throughout the Bible, even from the very beginning all the way through to the end. We are to be a separated people. The Council of Balaam, remembered the Moabites wanted Balak wanted him to throw a curse on Israel, to curse them and curse them and curse them. And Balaam, he liked the money, so he kept trying when he should have known better. But anyway, he figured out a way to meet Balak's terms. He says, well, if you can't beat them, join them. So he go over the threshold. Thresholds are important. They keep water out, but allow easy access for those to step over them. The sense here may be also that it was not only was the threshold ignored, it was being destroyed altogether, so that others no longer could see a separation. See that separation was the right path. We got that today. I mean, people that maybe used to go to church 15, 20 years ago, and don't go anymore at all, and have embraced what's going on in the world, and been part of the separation between what God. They don't even see it anymore. They don't see God as relevant. Today we are seeing the floor of paganism evenly, smoothly joined to the floor of Christendom, and so the threshold is gone. These people were leaping on it, jumping up and down out like they do on flags and stuff, when they were trying to, same way that they pounded the threshold away. I think that's kind of the idea here. So they said that in the same day I will punish all those that leap on the threshold, which fill their masters' houses with violence and deceit. When you step over or remove God's thresholds, nothing good results. Violence and deceit is as if the prophet is talking about what we see in our daily headlines in our papers today. Verse 10, and it shall come to pass in that day, again, there's that phrase, in that day, saith the Lord, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and a howling from the second, and a great crashing of the hills. And so the focus here is on the city of Jerusalem. We know where the fish gate is. It says, it shall come to pass in that day, in verse 7, for the day of the Lord, verse 8, the day of the Lord's sacrifice, verse 9, the day of the... So the day of the Lord, over and over and over, talking about the day of the Lord is a day of wrath and judgment. I think in Joel the same way, he tells it's a day of wrath. It's not a day of snatching away of the people. It's a day of wrath. And this is God's word, it's not the prophet's word. He's just the one giving it out. He's getting it from God, and he is giving it out. These are things that will come to pass for Judah. That there'll be a noise of cry from the fish gate. The word cry has the sense of a shriek. The word of noise added to show it was a loud shriek, a screaming, a terror. You can imagine what went on in Israel back in October when the Hamas came in and started shooting up you can imagine the screaming that was going on there as people were dying all around, and you were being pulled away and dragged by your hair. I mean, you can, so that's a kind of shriek that's going on. It's a shriek of terror. And a howling from the second. Animals howl when they are in distress. That's what they do, they howl. There was a great crashing from the hills. That's kind of the sounds of destruction. We see more of that today because we use explosive weapons. But in those days, they would break down the walls and burn the buildings and not pull them over and things like that. I think that's the idea there. Why the fish gate is noted here, I'm not sure. Why that particular gate is mentioned. We know that there's a lot of gates, and they go surround the city. But if you look on a map of that time frame, upon entering the fish gate, you can go west to Calvary on the road called Via della Sora. So fish gate's here, and if you look down the road, and if you could look straight all the way to the end, you could see where the cross of Christ. I don't know what other reason it's in here. I miss it. Verse 11, Howl ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down, all they that bear silver are cut off. Howl. So that howl means to mourn. I mean, not pretend you're a dog, but to mourn. Inhabitants of Maktesh. This is always a problem when you have something occur only once in the Bible and you have no other place to go and check it out. So the inhabitants of Maktesh. So it's a place, not a thing. It seems to be a generic name for a marketplace. Maktesh. You got some parts of the word market in there, but. You see a lot of markets in the East like that. These are open markets. They have covering over them, but the whole front is open. Narrow streets, vendors on both sides selling stuff, street food, vegetables, clothing, things like that. In that culture, they still have it in that culture, in Eastern culture. They still have the open markets. You see pictures of in Jerusalem, and there are people that go there and visit. They love the open markets where you go and you barter for stuff. I went to Italy on a trip. I was in the Navy, but I got some leave while we were over in the Mediterranean. And Marge flew in, and we lived in Naples for about a week. We took a trip. We wanted to go up north and go to Bologna. And other places like that. Went to one of the markets. They like to barter there. It's different there. And so I got bartering with this woman over something in this market. We were going back and forth. Funny she asked me to leave. Yeah. Go. Yeah, she didn't want to barter anymore. I didn't want to pay what she was asking, and she wasn't willing to come down anymore. But, I thought that was kind of just unusual. You don't do that in stores here. Any discount for seniors? I guess that's about all we get away with, or if I have a coupon. But anyway, as far as I can see, it might be a market, and in that case, and that makes some sense because the market it was important to the welfare of all the people because that's where they got much of their food. They didn't all have farms. And some of them, especially the ones that lived in the city, remember from our study of Nehemiah and things that when they built, they asked 1/10 of the people to come and live in the city. So when you become a city dweller, unless you have some herbs growing on your windowsill or something, you have to go to the market. And we have a little market on Route 1. That gal puts up her little tent there 3 days a week. Yeah, that's a little open market, So I think that's what's going on here. For all the merchants, people are cut. See, talking about merchant people. So these would be the sellers. Open market. See, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's an open market type of thing. So all the sellers that are cut down, all they that bear silver are cut off. They're put out of business. We can see that today in our culture, where some events or conditions cause people to refocus their buying on necessities and withdraw interest of luxury items and major purchases of all kinds. Sometimes, the market, COVID caused a lot of financial issues. A lot of financial issues. Verse 12, and it shall come to pass at that time that I will search Jerusalem with candles and punish the men that are settled on their lees, that say in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. If God says it's going to come to pass, it's going to come to pass. The fact that all things occur according to God's timing and not ours has, I believe, led some, perhaps many, maybe most, to think that it will not happen at all. God's, it's been 2,000 years since the Lord said, I will come again and receive you unto myself. I believe he's coming. He can come today. But it has been almost 2,000 years. So he said that. Of course, some of the prophecies that he would come the first time go back in the Bible almost that long. So it should not be a surprise to a Bible believer that it means he will come, but we know that the day is going to be set by God the Father and nobody else. And so the invasion will be, and here we also see that this invasion that's coming, and the Babylonians, is going to be a comprehensive one. It's going to involve everybody, and it's going to be complete. He says, I will search Jerusalem with candles. Nothing will be hid. Nothing will be hid from God's eyes. I mean, nobody's going to be able to hide from the Babylonians in Jerusalem. It talks about search it with candles. What do? It's when you go into a dark place and you need light, you light the candle. And so he's got everything, no hiding place is going to not be revealed. He says, and punish men that are settled on their lees. Now the word lees refers to the dregs of wine, I guess. That's the definition I found. They're not jeans. So to be settled on one's lees is a phrase that refers to one who is comfortable in their sin. I think that's the idea. They're comfortable in their sin. I'm not such a bad person. I do this and that, but there are other things I do that are good. To be settled on one's lees is a phrase that refers to one who's comfortable in their sin. Psalm 55, verse 19, God shall hear and afflict them, even he that abideth of old, Selah, because they have no changes, therefore they fear not God. Nothing has happened to them, so they fear, well, if nothing's happened to me, I must be doing okay with God. They say in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. I think we have a world full of people like that, many of whom call themselves Christians. And so that's a very dangerous position to take, that God will, he's not going to judge sin. Psalm 104, the wicked through the pride of his countenance will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. He doesn't even think about God. Those who do not communicate with God on a daily basis do not see his relevance in daily living. They just don't see where he's relevant. Those who do, and so Malachi chapter 2, verse 17, ye have wearied the Lord with your words. Yet ye say, wherein have we wearied him? When you say, everyone that doeth evil is good in the sight of the Lord, and he delighteth in them, or where is the God of judgment? So you have people saying, look, God's going to just weigh my good with, somebody else isn't going to work out for me. I've been pretty good. I donate clothing. I do all this. I go to church. I don't swear. I don't drink, and they think God is not going to do anything. Where is God? Where's the God of judgment? He's coming. He's coming. Verse 13. Let me check here. Okay. Therefore their goods shall become a booty, and their houses a desolation. They shall also build houses, but not inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards, but not drink of the wine thereof. You can see why a lot of people don't preach on this book. Yeah, I mean, it's therefore their goods shall become a booty. All their stuff will be taken away. Their houses a desolation. They will have empty houses. The houses will be empty. There won't be anybody living in them. They shall also build houses, but not inhabit them. Then they shall plant vineyards, but not drink of the wine. They will not get to enjoy the fruits of their effort, their labors. We see this in modern day wherefore, where after a period of time, people try to claim ownership to property and possessions they lost in a war. The Jews in a number of countries after World War II, when they went back into the lands and into the cities from which they were taken, went to their old homes to get them, and were denied them, and some of them were even killed. So, where was I when I so interrupted myself? Okay, the booty's there. And let's see. So, verse 14 at the bottom of page 9, the great day of the Lord is near. So, they added in the word great there to give it added emphasis. The great day of the Lord. It's not going to be a great day in the sense, oh, what a great day. No, it's going to be not a good day. Is near and hasted greatly, even the voice of the day of the Lord. The mighty man shall cry there bitterly. So, I had some things here that I wrote out. The great day of the Lord. Let me see. I think I have something here. Yeah. Okay, this is, I think, the times that phrase was used. Back in 1640, 640 BC, 720, the great day of the Lord. 627 to 586 BC, Jeremiah 30, verse 7, alas, for that day is great, so there is none that is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. 571 BC, Ezekiel in chapter 30, for the day is near, even the day of the Lord is near, a cloudy day, blah, blah, blah. And so then in 835 BC, I'm going backwards in time, 796, Joel, and the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for the camp is very great, for he is strong that executed the word. For the day of the Lord is great and terrible, who can abide? And then in 430 BC, Malachi, behold, I will send Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great day of the Lord. In 90 AD, Revelation 6:17, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall stand by? So we see clearly that this is a day in which we do not want to participate, for sure. It's a day, it's the day of judgment of an angry God. And then it says it's near. It is near and hasteth greatly. So it's near, it's near, it's near. I mean, we're still waiting for it. But look at here. These are the estimated dates that the prophets wrote these things that I just read. It started back in 835 BC, and it was there, and even before the Lord Jesus Christ appears on earth in 90 AD, in Revelation it appears. That's 925 years in that period that have gone by. And now we have another 2,000 years to add on to that. So we're getting very close to 3,000 years before that prophecy started to be given out. Even the voice of the day of the Lord. There, Isaiah 66, verse 6, the voice of a noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of the Lord that rendereth recompense to his enemies. Revelation 19:15, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, and with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of his fierceness of his wrath of Almighty God. And it says, the mighty man shall cry bitterly. Revelation 6:15, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, which is the day, so it gets a little more closer to, tells them who, the wrath of the Lamb would not make a lot of sense to an Old Testament person. But for the New Testament person, we know very clearly, it's speaking of the Lord Jesus Christ. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? And then in verse 15, the day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness. And so I just kind of put all those phrases out. Day of wrath, of course, God's anger and rage. A day of trouble and distress, adversity, affliction, narrowness, all kinds of things going on, and it comes in many, many forms. A day of wasteness and desolation, tempest, devastation, a day of darkness and gloominess, spiritual misery, and lowering, and thick darkness, a lot of misfortune and wickedness. And we see that go. I mean, our nation is filled with wickedness now. Filled with wickedness. A day of clouds and thick darkness, thunderclouds, gloom, a lowering spiritual sky, gross darkness. We're entering that stage of gross darkness. And so let's see, the day of the trumpet, the alarm against the fenced cities and against the high tower in verse 16. Our prophet is functioning here some 15 years before the first invasion of Judah by the Babylonians in 606. So all this is all beforehand. And so in the days of Josiah, probably now Jehoiakim is probably in there, and then Zedekiah will eventually get in there. But a day of trumpet and alarm, that's what they did. They sound the trumpets. Remember in Nehemiah with the wall, sound the trumpet if there's any problem. They get that ram's horn and let her rip. 60 days later, the trumpets and the alarm were to get the people ready for the invasion. He's warning them. He's warning them of how bad it's going to be. So what are they going to do? How are they going to build? What are they going to build? How are they going to get the army? How are they going to do all that? Verse 17, and I will bring still more to come. And I will bring distress upon men, and they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against the Lord. And they shall, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as dung. They'll be treated as an enemy of God, and they shall walk like blind men, without direction, stumbling around, not knowing where they're going. Matthew 15:14, the Lord's telling, let them alone. He's talking about the Pharisees. They be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall in a ditch. We have blind leadership in our country. Because they have sinned against the Lord. That's the reason for the blindness. And their blood shall be poured out as dust. Bodies in the street. I mean, just poured out like dust. Devastation, killing, rotting corpses everywhere. I mean, there are parts of the world where this has happened. We haven't seen it here. Anyway, it's going to get bad. It's going to get bad. And then 18, this is important, that we need to know this. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath. But the whole land shall be devoured by fire of his jealousy. For he shall make even a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. Whew. Boy, that doesn't sound anywhere good. It's interesting today that there are a number of ads encouraging people to convert their investments to silver and gold. Jeremiah 9:23, thus saith the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might, and let not the rich man glory in his riches, but let him that glory in this, that he understand and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which exercise loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For these things I delight, saith the Lord. We are trying to buy ourselves out of deep pits. We have created and fallen into following the wisdom and counsel of corrupted minds, fueled by presumptuous acts of sin against the holy God. There are many gods being followed by today's leaders who have turned their backs from the God of the Bible they're following and has made our glorious God angry. Exodus 34:14, for thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. But the whole land shall be devoured by fire, by the fire of his jealousy. I don't necessarily think that means physical flame, the fire of his jealousy. You know, we talk about people getting fired up for something, you know. It's not like they're burning to death. They're fired up inside. Their passions have been stoked up. You know, so I think every time we see fire, we think the land is going to be burning. It's not. It has a different meaning here. And so Psalm 78, verse 58, for they provoked him to anger with their high places and moved him to jealousy with their graven images. That's what they were doing. They just couldn't, they just didn't get it. It had been noticeably, well, we've noticed it noticeably hotter this year, haven't we? The earth is noticeably hotter. There is a certain amount of heat, real heat being generated, I think, by God to alert us a little bit. Records are being made. This is a warning of things to come, I think. For he shall make a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. And Jeremiah there, O Jacob, my servant, saith the Lord, for I am with thee. I will make full end of all nations, whither I have driven thee, and I will not make a full end of thee, but correct thee in measure. Yet I will not leave thee wholly unpunished. So that's what's going on with Israel. I mean, they got really a bad whooping. I mean, they went to the woodshed way too many times, and they got paddled till they have blisters on them, on their national soul. But he says, but I will not, but I will make full end of thee, but correct thee in measure. He's not going to make full end. He'll make full end of some other people, but not his people Israel.